Hello everyone, my name is Rebecca Legon and I'm an amputee lioness and body positive advocate. I am delighted to invite you to the 4th season of the Beyond Disability podcast. In this season, you will be hearing some incredible conversations from our Dorset Orthopaedic patients who have risen to the challenge of adapting their lives after experiencing limb loss or injury. So make sure you click that follow button so you never miss an episode, and I hope you enjoy.
This is a strange question, but I've been asked it before, so I'm keen to see what you say. What would you say has been the best part of losing an arm?
Very interesting. I think, looking at the process and the journey so far.
Hey everyone, welcome to season 4 of the Beyond Disability podcast. I'm here today with Henry Dunn. How you doing, man?
I'm good, how are you?
Yeah, good. It's nice doing it on a little podcast, isn't it?
Very professional here
Yeah.
at Dorset Orthopaedics.
Do you want to go through and just basically tell people why you're in a prosthetic clinic to start off with, and then I'll do the same?
Yeah,
just
so
to give a bit of context.
Absolutely, give a bit of background. So I'm a patient here at Dorset Orthopaedic and have been for now about a year and a half. So I've been an amputee just over 2 years in November, just gone. And yeah, I worked very closely with the team here at Dorset Orthopaedic, working on prosthetics, specifically upper limb, of course, looking at body-powered and myoelectric devices. So I've progressed very nicely in the last, I'd say it's been about 18 months.
So what actually happened to your arm? You got to fill everyone in who doesn't know what happened.
Yeah,
I know
so
now, but
similar to yourself, I was in a foreign country. I was in Australia working on a remote cattle station. So one of Australia's most remote towns called Larimer, which is...
What part of Australia is it?
That's the Northern Territories.
Right.
So if you look at the whole of the Northern Territory, the population is about quarter of a million, 250,000. And the space is so vast, each town is really very small populations anyway. But my town specifically had 12 people, so it was a very small outback classic town, not much there. So decided to work for 3 months on a cattle station, 15,000 cattle, 40-degree heats, 88 days. That's the plan.
You're pretty fair hair as well. Yeah, that must have been tough for you, mate.
Yeah,
every day factor 50.
Yeah, well, I did plan for that. I bought a litre of sun cream out with me in Australia, but actually we didn't wear sun cream because we wore long trousers and shirts,
big wide brim hat. Yeah.
So yes, I would still put SPF on my face, but actually didn't really have to put sun cream on, just because we were covered by clothing. But there are some pictures on my Instagram, and I do a lot of talks as well, and that really showcases the kind of extreme environment I was in. But during that time, we were working with cattle every single day, fighting bushfires. One interesting job I had to do was the bore run, which was go around the whole station, which would take all day, 12 hours, and make sure kind of all the troughs were running clear of water, and fill up the bores with diesel, so the whole cattle station could be fed with water. Now, some of the troughs you'd arrive and there'd be a fat python sat in there just looking at you, and you'd have to take them out and walk them 100 metres away, because sometimes they would affect the cattle, and probably I saw one go for a calf before. So you
should tell people that's how you lost your arm.
Unfortunately not.
I've been asked a few times if the leg was a shark attack. And I always just nod, shark attack.
Especially when I say Australia, I think that's the first thing.
People think it was some sort of
either
animal.
A shark or a croc or that's
you had some sort of machinery, right? Is that what happened?
It was. So during the last week, we were kind of finished with cattle work, and then we decided that it was time to focus on fence work. So each station is divided by huge kind of fields, which are massive and are divided by barbed wire fence to stop these cattle from escaping, where you've just spent 3 months trying to sort them out into these paddocks. So to make these paddocks, you have to use a hydraulic post rammer, which is a big machine on the back of a tractor, 185 kilogram weight, weighing about that big, and that would hammer in 3-inch stainless steel posts into the ground, which would create our laneways for kind of driving to walk cattle to the next paddocks. This was actually happening my last week of work, so my flights were booked home, ready to get back to London, back to England, and start my life as kind of the year of war had come to an end. And during pretty much 3 days before I was due to leave. That weight came completely down on my forearm as I was measuring one post to the next, completely crushing it in that exact moment. So
Do you remember the accident? Yeah.
I remember everything. Now this will be interesting when we talk about your story, because I don't know how much you remember, or I think from previous conversations that we've had, even though it's an upper and lower, you weren't fully aware, were you? You woke up, or?
No, I still have no idea
Yeah.
what happened. I for those that don't know, crashed my motorbike in Colombia. I was riding from Texas down to Argentina with the intention of going across to Antarctica, and I made it as far as Colombia, and then woke up in a ditch. I kind of have a faint memory of someone being there. If they were sat next to me, I wouldn't have a clue what they looked like. And then small little snippets of memory after that, but nothing really that I can actually piece together what happened or how long I was there for. So the complete opposite to you, I don't remember anything. I just know I had some sort of motorbike crash, and I have tried to piece back together what happened. I have strangely all my injuries are on the right hand side of my body. So my right collarbone's broken, my right hand's broken, my right leg snapped. The right side of my bike was completely damaged, but then my left leg had to get chopped off. So it's a bit of a weird situation where I can't quite work out the mechanism through which my leg got crushed, but it did. And yeah, I have snippets of memory, but nothing that I could actually tie together to make a proper story.
Yeah, I think later on in the episode we'll just talk about how not knowing what really happened affected mindset as well, because I've kind of pieced every dot together. I was there, aware when it happened. I tied a tourniquet onto my bicep when it happened. So my adrenaline was through the roof, and I was in a kind of fight for life mindset of, right, I'm 500 kilometres south of any hospital. I'm bleeding out quite a lot because my arm is pretty much gone. How am I going to survive, and how am I going to get to the hospital I need? So what I did, tied a tourniquet, got to the pub, which was a tiny shack, called an ambulance, airlifted 8 hours, and the rest is history.
So the airlift took 8 hours?
So the airlift it took about an hour and a half for the ambulance to come to the pub. I was then driven 1 hour to the next town, because we were actually in tropical season, so the storms, it was a grey kind of dark grey clouds in the sky, which was a bit unusual for the days that we were out there, because it was pretty much sunny all the time. And then about an hour and a half later from that point, the helicopter came, and it took an overall 8 hours from the time it happened to get into hospital. So and at that time we had to emergency land to refuel. Then we couldn't take off because of the storms. So I was injected straight away with ketamine, about 4 mil, I believe.
How was that?
I hated it. It just kind of numbed the pain completely. It was just like how to word it. Yeah, I think I definitely needed it, but at the time, it was like an instant hit of pain relief, and I think I kind of fell asleep, but I have a memory of being awake in that helicopter that whole time, because I watched the sunset come down, and they kind of nudged me to wake me up to look outside, and that kind of eased me a bit. But yeah, straight away heavy drugs, because this was high level trauma. Now, if you look at the mechanism, it's a vertical weight that came straight down. This could have been a very different injury, and I think the difference between me and you is I had straight trauma to one area, bang, and it was pretty much there. But different to you kind of said your whole left side. So even though people see your amputation, actually your whole body has been through so much more than what people see right now is yours out there.
Yeah, it's more that it's my amputation at one point was like the least scary thing that was happening. Like other than just the broken bones, once I got into hospital, they chopped my leg off, and then I got sepsis. I got blood was poisoned, my lungs, my kidneys, all my organs weren't working properly, and it got to the point where I was on a ventilator in critical care, and that was the thing that was worrying. The leg amputation was like a side note to the actual big problem, which is trying not to die from sepsis, which I mean it obviously worked because I'm here, but that was a nightmare. And then once the sepsis cleared, then it was like, right, what are we going to do with the leg? and I had 8 surgeries on my amputated leg to take more off and clean it out because it was infected still. And then eventually that infection cleared, they tied it, they sewed it up, and then operated on some of the other bones that were broken. But yeah, for a period of time, the leg amputation was like the least of my worries. It's just strange to say.
So those surgeries you had, 8 surgeries, were they all in Colombia or
all in Colombia?
Process?
Yeah.
All in Colombia.
All in Colombia.
So, what was the duration of your time after your accident that you were still in Colombia before flying back to England?
So I had, a bit of a strange process to even get to hospital. I had to, obviously, I don't know. I have basically a whole day which is unaccounted for, which to say I've got snippets of memory from. Then after that, I ended up in the hospital up north, and then they got taken back south through the power of the internet. Someone basically helped me arrange an ambulance, and then I was in hospital in Medellin for about a month, and after that, flew back on an air ambulance to London, and then I was in hospital in London for like another two and a bit months.
Okay.
So decent stint.
Weird question, but did you enjoy your time in hospital? Like, compare it to now, because I can self-reflect on my time in hospital. What was your experience like actually being in hospital compared to now, kind of in the early stages of your rehab when you actually returned home?
That's an interesting question, because my hospital had very different periods of hospital. It wasn't all the same. My period in Colombia was like survival mode, just try and stay alive, because there was all this other stuff going on, and I wasn't thinking about learning to walk again or what life was going to be like in the future. It was just stay alive. That was like the goal. And also I was on a ton of medication which like clouded my brain a bit, and there was periods of time when I couldn't really speak because I was on so many drugs. So that was just a bit of a blur and a mess, and like I wouldn't say I enjoyed it. It was just essential to live. Then when I came home, I had a week in Royal London, the trauma hospital, and I kind of, it sounds strange to say, but I came back from Colombia thinking that was, I've made it. Like, I'm out of Colombia. I'm on the way home. Things are going to be all good now. And then I landed, and I suddenly realised, oh wait, this is just the start. Like I've not even scratched the surface. I hadn't even really processed the fact that I was missing a leg. I was just like, made it out of Colombia, back home. And I was like, one second, this is actually this is actually a pretty big deal. So then I got admitted into Royal London, and they said I was going to have to wait for a period of time in the Royal London to get into the rehab centre, but then I managed to get in pretty quick after about a week or so. And then after that, it was quite an incremental like improvement from where I've been, because I quickly got in a wheelchair, which I hadn't been in a wheelchair before. I then started to get on like prosthetic legs and like the inflatable legs, which help your leg get used to walking on it again. And that was the period when I was like, right, there's actually some hope here. And until that point, I would still say my mindset was like, I just got to deal with this. This is fine.
Yeah.
Didn't really feel even sad about it. I was just like, this is annoying. It's fine. The hardest period of the whole bit was when I got back home for the first time, and I got given like a weekend release from hospital, and they just said to me like, go home for a weekend, see how you get on, like come back on Monday morning. And I got back to my flat, and I was like, one second, this is totally different. Like, I'm in a wheelchair. I can't fit through my bathroom door. Like, if I want to go to the toilet at night, it's not just like, I'll just hop out, go toilet, go and grab some water, get back in bed.
Yeah.
It's like I'm actually disabled, like, or my life has changed, which I hadn't really processed. And that was for me like a big wake up call. I remember going back to the rehab unit on the Monday, just like super depressed for like a couple of days, and then sort of just processed it. And I still have those moments though when I'm like trying to do something that I would have done normally very easily, and then it reminds me that I actually have this problem which I didn't have before. But still here and getting on with what we can get on with. The same as you must have stuff all the time. It's quite annoying. And
so I was in hospital for 2 weeks, and then I was discharged for 1 week in a hotel room before I could fly back, get the fit to fly from the doctors. But the support I had with Australian care was unbelievable. So I had every aspect of rehab I could possibly have, psych support. I felt very bubble
Looked
wrapped
after,
there, which was great. Returning to England, very different. With the whole referral system and process, I was back to square one. So I had to see a GP. Now, why would I go and have to see a GP? But this was part of the process, and we felt like we were gone back 10
Really?
steps.
You have to go see a GP?
So I had to go back to Bristol. I saw a plastic surgeon down there, kind of in a doctor's surgery, and his advice was, what are your options? And then, thankfully through areas and kind of avenues, I could access Dorset Orthopaedic kind of care. So then once we were here, I knew I was in safe hands to progress.
Yeah.
But I had a phase of, I don't really know how long it was, but what are my options here?
But what are the? I mean, I know nothing about. I didn't know anything about leg amputees till recently. But what are the options for an upper limb amputee? What's on the table?
Well, in terms of prosthetics.
Well, everything. Like, what are the considerations? Like for me, I know the big considerations are managing like the stump to try and get it ready to use a leg prosthetic, which you can try and live an everyday life with, and then after that you can hopefully progress onto like cycling legs and running legs and whatever it is. But like for an upper limb amputee, like I've obviously seen your arm, and it's very different in the sense that like you're not going to use it necessarily, try and use it the way you would use your old hand, in the sense that I'll try and use my leg like I would have done an actual leg. Whereas for you, like what you trying to what are the goals with a arm prosthetic?
So essentially it's a similar principle to a lower limb. It's a residual limb, it's a stump. So managing the scar tissue around it, the skin graft tissue, pain, it's very similar. The major difference is with a lower limb, you're constantly on downward pressure within your lower limb. So you're going to have much more higher risk of blistering and things like that. Like you are, if you don't wear your prosthetic, you'll be in a wheelchair, really, to move around. That's kind of the second option. Now, for me, I've got both legs, so mobility-wise is fine, but it's actually kind of different, more specific tasks. So, there are aids and things, but my journey started on body-powered prosthetics. This is my body-powered one, which is controlled by body movement. So there would be a kind of a harness that would attach to my split hook that connects to my right side. So the reason why they call it body-powered is because I use my body to power that hook. Now I have different attachments for different activities. So not one hook, not one attachment will do all kind of required outcomes. Like a leg, you've got different legs for different activities. Same for upper. And essentially I have this pin lock here, so I can just click in and I'm locked in, so this is not going to come off. And then I've got a ratchet here that
to tighten it up.
Because as you know, your stump will change shape.
Of course.
So the longer you wear a prosthetic, in my case, most cases, my residual limb will shrink over that time.
Now
if it shrinks and it becomes looser in that socket, I'm not getting the maximal kind of outcome of that prosthetic. So that's why I've gone for this ratchet system, which not all amputees will go for. But I'm very active, I'm very I'm always in the gym, in the garden. So for me, that prosthetic serves me a greater purpose. Moving on to the myoelectric devices, can't just click in and off I go with this. This would take me maybe 5 minutes to get on, 5 minutes to get off.
Why is that? Because it's quite
because
tight,
it uses a vacuum socket rather than a pin lock.
Does that go straight onto your skin, or does that go into onto the liner?
Straight onto my skin.
Right.
Because there's built-in electrodes that sit on my actual skin.
So do you control it by kind of like trying to essentially flick or move the hand that's not there?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Fine.
So we'll talk about phantom pain as well. I think it's quite important to cover. But my phantom limb exists, and I can feel every digit in my hand, feel my wrist movement. So it's really strange when I shut my eyes. I can literally feel that my hand is still there.
Yeah, I know. I understand that. I have the similar thing.
Yeah, it's a strange feeling, and I think I can't imagine what it's like lower limb, and you probably can't imagine what it's like upper limb.
No.
But phantom limb is a real thing. Many amputees experience it.
I quite like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I try and activate it to just try and feel like I've got my leg back.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
So what's your pain levels with your phantom pain? Because a lot of people associate phantom limb with actually pain.
Yeah, no, there's two. The phantom sensation and phantom pain are two very different things. My phantom pain, weirdly, was a lot worse when I took medication for it, and there was this drug called pregabalin which I used to take. And I mean, if you speak to my friends now, they talk about me when I was on pregabalin, because I would try and have a normal conversation, and me and you'd be speaking like this, and then I just completely forget what I was talking about. You're just staring to thin air, and they're like, "Mate,
yeah,
you're gonna finish what you were saying?" And I'm like, I can't remember what I was talking about, and it honestly felt like it melted my brain. And actually, when I first started coming here to Dorset, I remember speaking to Kat, and I just said, like, I'm absolutely hating the way this pregabalin's making my brain feel, and they're saying I should be on it for another 6 months. There's actually a conversation I had with the doctor, who was like, maybe you've got some lasting head injury from the crash, rather than the pregabalin. And I was like, nah, I can just tell that this is the drugs. A Kat says, she said, well, sometimes people actually deal with the phantom pain better when they can kind of just feel it naturally rather than having it blocked out by a drug.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided just to kind of risk it. Not that it was a big risk, because I could always start taking it again, but like I kind of went somewhat against the advice that I've been given by the doctors to take it for another 6 months. Stopped taking it, and my brain immediately cleared. And I used to get phantom pain to the point where, like, we'd be sat chatting or be doing something. I'd be like, oh, my leg would start zapping.
Yeah.
And it would stop me in my tracks. And then once I stopped taking drugs, that just went away, because my brain could almost like make sense of what was going on. It could feel things, and Kat gave me another good technique, which was, like you say, you can feel your old limb. I would move my foot. I would actually think, right, I need to move my foot, and I would, like, people that don't have a missing limb won't understand what I'm talking about. You probably get it because you have it with your hand, but I'd sit here and I'd wiggle my toes that don't exist, because there is something going on. The muscles, like if you look at my stump, it is moving. The muscles are contracting where they would do to make the toes move, and that was almost like my body recentering itself, and the phantom pain just isn't really an issue for me anymore. I don't take any drugs for it.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
But what you just said there, when you actually physically see your stump moving, that's exactly how I would
control the electrodes. Yeah, that makes sense. There are obviously some similarities between leg and arm.
Yeah, but the difference is my phantom limb isn't exactly how I remember my left hand to move. It's a lot slower, so it's like putting my hand in concrete.
Yeah, I
can't
understand
just
that.
open it and close it quickly, like snap fingers. I can't even snap my fingers in my phantom limb.
Yeah.
It's very slow, so it's, again, a lot of building up to moving on to a myoelectric device. But yeah, so how long were you on pre-Gablin then? 6 months and came off?
No.
Not as much as that.
My crash wasn't even 6 months ago. I was on. I mean, I don't know what I was taking in Colombia, but when I got back, I was on that throughout the whole time in hospital, rehab, and I was on quite a high dose as well. So I was getting mad phantom pains. But now I'm starting to think maybe a lot of that was because I was on the drugs. When I got out of hospital, I fairly quickly started coming here to just do physio with Kat, and then came off it, and it made a world of difference just for my clarity in terms of even my memory and stuff. Like I struggle to remember some parts of that period because it just clouds everything. But did you take it or not? No.
Yeah, well, they do say one of the biggest side effects you've got is, you've got your anxieties, headaches, but brain fog as well.
Yeah,
I experienced it. I wouldn't say I probably had it as bad as you, but I was on 500-600 milligrams a day.
Yeah, I had some
at my highest peak, but I was the same as you. I wanted to come off it, but I was advised to stay on it as long as possible.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that for some people, if you feel the phantom pain a lot early on, it means that your brain will make those pathways, and then you will continue to feel it for a long period of time. It was one of the piece of rationale that I was given. But then there's the other school of thought, which is if you allow your body and your brain to actually feel it and understand it, it's not getting lost in the brain fog. And for me, I think the way you view pain is a very big part of how it feels. Like, and particularly it sounds a little bit like I've made this up, but I have read that it's the case. If you are in a bad mood or you're stressed, you're anxious, you'll feel pain more, and like it's actually kind of proven that the link between your mental health and like your physical health is so closely connected. So I think the same thing is true with the phantom pain. Like if I'm in a bad mood, or like I'm feeling a bit annoyed about my leg, this, that, and then my phantom pain will start playing up, and it's almost a signal to be like, right, get this in order. It's very strange. It all links together.
Yeah.
If someone said to me before, "Oh, your pain's linked to your mindset," and I'll be like, whatever, you're talking rubbish. But I truly believe it is.
It's really interesting you said that, because we'll talk about mindset now, coping strategies. Because as you've said, if I get stressed, my phantom pain gets worse. So if I find myself doing exercise, I'm in the gym, I'm distracting myself in that positive way, then my phantom limbs pain is actually going to come down. So it's really interesting. What was your main coping strategy to kind of overcome what you were feeling at that time?
I feel like my coping mechanism in life has always been probably the same as you, which is exercise. And like if I was ever in a bad mood in the past, I would get up and go for a walk. So it was kind of annoying in the sense that the coping mechanism which I would have used to get over some of the tough periods was actually taken away because I couldn't go for a walk. But I would still like will myself down the gym, do some weights, go for a swim. Even today, like now, I do weights and swim pretty much every single day because it like just keeps my brain in check. And if I do have to have a day off because I'm too busy or whatever it is, at the end of the day I can feel it in my mood just from not having done that exercise. Just from it's like you get the endorphin hit and you feel like you've done something with your day. So like my coping mechanism always has been and probably always will be exercise. I imagine it's probably the same thing for you.
My coping mechanism in the very early days was ice baths. A lot of people who've listened to me before, I go mad about it because it helped me so much. Like you say, you couldn't necessarily go on a run, but you did other things. You wheel yourself, in the garden or whatever. For me, the only thing I could really do at that time was getting in an ice bath. I could go for a run. I was advised not to, just in case I fell and fell on my arm, which was still extremely raw and healing. So my auntie and uncle bought me an ice bath in that Christmas that I came home, and I set myself a challenge just to get in that ice bath every day, kind of through those dark winter months. I love
the ice bath. I think it's awesome. I went in one the other day. There's one near my house, like a saunas and ice bath place, and I've got a friend who's claiming he could stay in the ice bath longer, so I felt like I had to prove a point. Then remembered that I can't just get up and walk out of it like normal. So I'm sort of like straight in the sauna, get in the ice bath, and I was like rigid. I'm trying to get out of it and use my crutches, but my balance was gone. It was a complete shambles.
How did the cold water exposure affect your phantom pain? Or
it didn't really affect it.
It didn't?
No. Yeah. Do you have it?
So it's really strange. I use cold water therapy as well to help minimise phantom pain. Phantom sensation, discomfort. As we said, they're very different, but if I can control it kind of in the early hours of the morning, then it kind of sees through out the later in the day, because again, stress levels are lower, which has a direct effect on my phantom kind of experiences. I find cold water, because you're only really in there, it depends how much, maximum of maybe 5 minutes, 8 minutes if you really want to push it. So that's okay, because I get inside, I warm up. But if I'm out on a cold run and it's a cold day and I haven't wrapped my residuum up, it goes purple, because I haven't got much kind of
circulation,
muscle and circulation right at the distal end of my limb, so it goes so cold. So it's I have to really be careful, and then that can spike my phantom pain and then affect me wearing prosthetics. So if I can minimise those areas, then I can wear my prosthetics, because my prosthetics give me opportunities to carry out tasks with two working limbs essentially.
This is a strange question, but I've been asked it before, so I'm keen to see what you say. What would you say has been the best part of losing an arm?
It's very interesting. I think, looking at the process and the journey so far, I've channeled all my focus and energy through rehab, mental health, into CrossFit, into a new sport.
Did you not do CrossFit before?
I didn't do CrossFit before.
You've done a lot with it since.
I have, and as you know, I qualified for the adaptive games in Texas. So I'm now, I qualified. It was top 10 in the world in each division. And I finished 6th place this year. So that is 6th upper limb,
it's a huge achievement.
adaptive athlete in 2 points of contact. So for me, that's a world stage. I played an average level of rugby. You know, I was a good rugby player, but I was never on the pathway of Premiership and even Championship. So I think looking back, the opportunity of having that kind of opportunity to get to Texas and to represent GB in an adaptive games is bloody awesome. That would never have happened if I didn't lose my arm. It's the same for opportunities with my public speaking. You know, I'm looking at now really progressing with my public speaking, build a website, building my kind of personal brand, which we'll get onto with you, because I know your personal brand on Instagram is pretty big, so we'll have to get your tips and tricks. But yeah, it's building confidence in areas I never thought I would have done if this hadn't happened, and I've had so many opportunities.
Do you sort of feel like in some ways it was like the path you were meant to take?
It's definitely a path that I'm now on and can see it growing. Which is kind of crazy to think, because when you experience such a big loss in the early days, you kind of don't see a vision for the future. And you think, is this what life's going to be like? But I mean, for you, when was your accident? It's 5 months.
5.5 months ago, yeah.
So in 5.5 months, you have made unbelievable progress, you know, even with your prosthetics. Because I think as well, you've got to look at, you're very active before, you've used that in your rehab. How much do you think that's helped you progress in the rehab and now getting onto prosthetics?
In terms of being active?
Yeah. And the mindset that you've had, and now look at you with the opportunities that you're going through.
I think there's a balance to be had. I think actually in some ways my desire to get out and do everything is actually in some ways negative as well, because it means that I'm very impatient and get frustrated when I can't do certain things, and then will, like, on days when maybe I shouldn't use my leg, because until now I've been following like the NHS pathway, so I've had sockets that haven't really fit. It's only now I'm here with Dorset that I'm starting to actually get sockets that hopefully are going to fit in the next couple of weeks, and then maybe it'll be a bit more of a stable journey where I can have like consistent use of the leg. Because up until now, I'll plan a week full of things, I'll go and do all of them, and then at the end of the week my leg is just destroyed, and then it gets to Monday for the week next week and I'm like, right, here we go again, and I'll try and put it. But whereas if I'd maybe took my foot off the gas, if you pardon the pun, I'd actually be able to let it recover. So like having that drive to get out and do stuff is great, because it means that you're like pushing forward with your life, but actually sometimes having the ability to just take a chill is needed.
And I think you've been only 5 months. I look at back, I'm only 2 years. I honestly put aside that initial year was to get the mindset right, get the rehab right, because I know, you're doing the same thing, build the foundation blocks for what is going to be the rest of our lives as amputees. I think if you rush it, you don't focus on it, you kind of don't understand the injury, I think it can have knock-on effects later on.
What were you doing in the first period of time since, like, in the first year after your accident? Were you just pure rehab?
Pretty much. I think first 6 months was really intense, just because I studied sports injuries and rehab at uni, so I knew the importance of kind of early onset. My main focus was actually the mindset. I think if I knew I was active, that would have a positive effect on my mindset. You know, I just had the best year of my life, and I'd come home with one less limb in January or in December. So January, February, March, they're going to be pretty shit months. So what can I do to help kind of promote my mental health, self and rehab? And then with that, it was just a domino effect of small little steps, ice baths, to then training. But first of all, it was rehab. And I walked into my local CrossFit gym, and actually that was the best thing I ever did, because I only saw that as rehab in the first stages. And then I started getting stronger, I started adapting exercises, and then I started competing. And now, you know, a year and a half later, I qualified for the games. So, it was just kind of an onward kind of progression from that point.
So you weren't sat around bored then?
I wouldn't say I live in the countryside. I'm very blessed where I currently live back home with my parents. I think it might have been a different story if I was in a flat in London living on my own. But yeah, I was in a position with family where I was cared for, looked after. Bearing in mind I couldn't drive at this point.
Yeah, of course.
So we were in Gloucestershire, but you can't exactly walk into town.
No.
You can't, even my little village doesn't even have a bus route. So I was completely reliant
You're
on
stuck.
mum and dad.
Yeah.
So once I got past that point, it got easier. But I kind of had little things on a day-to-day basis, like my ice baths, my rehab, that kept me busy, kept me distracted, and then kind of told myself, get past this point. This point's going to pass. So if you can get past that, things will get better.
Yeah, it's an important way to look at it. This too shall pass. One of my favourite quotes.
Yeah, that was Tom Hanks, wasn't it? Yeah. But it's so true, because you think it's going to last forever when you're in this point. And if you have the correct mindset, knowing it will pass, then it makes it easier. And understanding that these dark points in this fluctuation of that journey is kind of ride the wave, but then when you hit these low points, let them come in. Kind of understand that you could have a bad day and write the whole day off in that early point.
Well, the question I asked you earlier about the best part of losing, your arm, in my case a leg, I got asked that in another podcast a while ago. And
What did you answer?
I thought it was very bizarre, and it links back to what you said there. For me, it's the sort of, it's not like a physical thing. It's not like, oh great, I've got a few extra Instagram followers. That's all just like noise. It actually is like the things you learn about yourself and about life from having something like this happen is quite significant. And I now look back at things which I would have got annoyed about or frustrated with in the past, just like they were just nonsense things that just aren't important. And I kind of have that thing now that if something's bothering me or it's like a day that's going wrong or something, I kind of find it quite easy to recenter it and realise it's not a big deal. And like that all just links into the now. Do you know what I mean? It's like the leg stuff is annoying right now, but it will pass. It will get sorted. It'll become a non-issue. I look back at it like, why was I worried about that? And I've kind of just got that part of my brain now which seems to have opened up post-crash, which is actually a real positive thing. And I know other people who have gone through life-changing injuries. One of my friends, a guy called Ed Jackson, he had a spinal injury, and like he says he'd even go as far as saying that he wouldn't go back to pre-injury Ed. He was a professional rugby player.
Yeah, I know of Ed.
Yeah, and Ed said he wouldn't go back to pre-injury because, like, at the time he was a big ego rugby guy, and now he's one of the nicest blokes I know, and he's a very like well put together human, and he thinks he's like that because of his injury.
Yeah,
and it's just interesting to hear your story and Ed's and other people who have like had that life-changing event, which has then set them up for what can be an incredible life.
And how amazing is it to hear those stories, especially so early on?
Oh yeah, it's wicked.
Did you know any amputees when you woke up in hospital?
No, I mean I had no idea what it meant to be an amputee. There's a video of me. I turned around to everyone and I made a joke about I just bought a pair of Birkenstocks, and I was just said, because everyone was stressing, I thought I was going to die, I've lost my leg, and I just let everyone know my leg had been amputated by saying, yeah, my leg's just been chopped off, but I bought a new pair of Birkenstocks, so if anyone wants the left one, they can have it, because I don't need it anymore.
Well, you need to find an amputee in the UK, he's your size on a leg.
But as part of that video, I also said, like, don't stress, it's all fine, I'll just get a prosthetic and whack that on and we'll get on with life like normal. Not having any idea what it meant to go through the process of trying to learn to walk, get prosthetics that fit, all of that stuff, I had no idea. Very quickly, Millie, who's obviously a patient here as well, Millie Pickles, I got speaking to Millie while I spoke to her on the phone while I was in hospital in Colombia. We didn't know each other at all. She's now one of my good friends. But I got a lot of comfort in the fact that Millie's done some incredible things in her life post losing a limb, and since then I've met plenty more people who have gone on to do loads of stuff in a similar position to me. So like, it is good to have those people out there to see doing the good stuff. But then also at the same time, like, I quite like hearing the periods of time where they had the issues, because that's what I'm in now, and it's like, right, you had that issue, but you got through it and you're fine now. So yeah, it's good to have them people.
I think as well social media is so important. if you can use it in a positive way, like you just said, you contacted Millie, and you know what, so did I. I think Millie had that big following. You're now probably one of, again, you're probably at that level, the amount of people you actually probably influence at home, new amputees, young lads coming through with lost limbs, because you have grown your Instagram so big, which is so good to see, because you're demonstrating life as an amputee, daily issues, and actually what an incredible life you can live.
Yeah, I'm still early doors there. Like mine, I don't think I'm necessarily going to be inspiring people with what I'm doing yet, because at the moment I'm still hobbling about on my crutches till I can get everything sorted. But I'd like to think eventually that's the plan. Although one thing I do have, and obviously nowadays it's a very strange world we live in. People will come up to me in the street going, "Oh mate, I've seen you on Instagram, I've seen you on whatever." And the thing that they say most often is like, and these aren't amputees, it's just able-bodied people who have seen my Instagram, and they're like, "Oh, I couldn't be bothered to go to the gym last night, and then I genuinely saw your video and thought, oh, if this guy with one leg's doing it, I've got to go." And you must have the same impact on people where you're doing fireman's carries with one arm, and then they're like, right,
I've got no excuse.
If Henry's doing this, I'm a bit sad because my girlfriend dumped me. That's not really an excuse to go to the gym.
Yeah, I think more. You said eventually, but already you're getting kind of approached in the street, and that's an example of the influence that you have on other people. I think the main thing is that it's the principles that you're showing, and same for when I do my talks, it's not, no one can relate because no one's an amputee, it's the principles, and if they can see resilient young people, then they will listen to me, and understand, well, what are you doing that I can put in my life to get better. I think a lot of it is, how do we actually grow resilience? It's so important. And I think the main thing for me was I always used to put myself in difficult situations. Now, working on a remote cattle station in Australia was a tough place to be. It wasn't easy, but the resilience I gained in that experience has now trickled into the resilience I needed when I lost my limb. Now, you have to be very resilient to do your journey, because just to explain, I don't know if the listeners know, but where is it, Texas to...
Yeah. So I'd done a couple of big motorbike trips, but the one which I crashed on, I'd been riding down from the US all through Central America, like Mexico, and down through all the Central American countries, and then into Panama, where I hopped across to Colombia, into Venezuela, and then back into Colombia. So I was going down to Ecuador when I crashed. But yeah, mate, it's like, I miss it more than anything. It's the best way to live, the best way to travel. Just wake up in the morning, hop on the motorbike, you meet people. I was learning Spanish, like the culture. You're just soaking up culture, because it's not like doing a tourist trail backpacker route where you're just staying in hostel after hostel and doing like, you know, the classic backpacker thing. If you're on a motorbike, you stay with local families, you meet actual local people who never meet tourists. Like, and this is nothing to do with Instagram, because at the time I didn't have a big presence on Instagram, but like, you go to a little town and everyone in the town want a photo with you, because they're just like I went to some places in Venezuela and people would tell me stories about a German person they'd met 10 years ago. That's like the closest thing they had to have met a Westerner, because people just don't go there. And that for me is like proper travel. And I wouldn't even say it's resilience. Like my goal in life has always been the same thing, just to have an interest in life. I just want to have an interest in life. And I think that's why this has actually been taken, like, I think I've taken this all quite well, because whilst this wasn't part of my plan, it's still pretty interesting. Like, not many people have had the experience of losing a limb, plus it mixed in with, like you say, all this crazy like Instagram, social media, whatever it is that's going on outside of the limb loss. Like, it is interesting, and I feel like I'm kind of achieving my life goals in a very strange roundabout way, which it's not ideal. I'd rather be doing it with two legs, but this is the hand we've been dealt.
Exactly. So, play the hand you get in life.
Yeah.
When's the plan to get back on a bike then?
It's tough, because there's quite, like, you've changed gear with your left foot, so I now will have to get a bike which is automatic, but eventually I'll go back to Colombia to where I crashed and pick up where we left off. But I think there's there's a decent chunk of time where I'm going to have to get walking and properly on the prosthetic before I can even think about doing that. Because right now, it's my leg wouldn't even stay on the thing, because they have to build the prosthetic up quite high at the back when your knee still needs a lot of stability. but eventually I'll be able to. And I met some guys from Ossa the other day, and
Nice.
the guy that they brought along, he rides bikes all the time, and it is possible.
100% it's possible. I've seen so many amputees, even upper limb. I've seen lads on bikes.
Oh yeah.
I think my advice to you is build those foundation blocks. You've got that
Yeah.
vision. That could be in 2 years, could be in 5 years.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
the fact you want to get back on, which you told me before, is awesome.
Yeah.
What does your mum think?
She's never really liked motorbikes, to be honest. Like the thing is, my mum knows that I'll do whatever makes me happy, but there's an element of it now as well, and it's becoming more of a thing the more I think about it. I'm like, is it a selfish thing to like go back and ride and do what I was doing before, because there clearly is quite a lot of risk involved, and I'm not sure I'd want to put my mum through it again. So like that's the only thing where I'm like, oh, maybe I wouldn't get back on a bike, but like that's something I have to work out over time.
Yeah, and
because it does affect, and you must know this too, like the amputation and the injury is bad for you, but for your friends and family it can potentially be even worse. Like I know our situations are a bit different in the sense that it sounds like once your arm was amputated and you were in hospital, there was kind of like, right, well, you're not going to die, you've got one arm. It's the emotional side. Whereas my parents, I know they've had to like be told by doctors this is like a minute by minute situation, like critical care, things can change very quickly, just be ready for that. And I can't even imagine how that must have felt for them. So now I'm a bit like, it's a tough place to then turn around to my mum and be like, see ya, I'm off again.
Yeah.
They're the things I'm grappling with at the moment, but it's not like a fear thing, it's just a guilt thing, which I'll have to work out myself.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm just thinking, so how did your parents find out when your accident happened? Who got in contact with them?
It's all, I still don't fully know exactly how it all played out, but I have one of the faint memories I have was being in this place in like remote Colombia that had a wooden roof, and I remember they had my phone, and I kind of semi-remember my mate Jack, who was in Colombia as well. We were travelling together, but we go and do like 2-week side missions on our own and then come back together and spend 2 months doing something. And then, because sometimes we just want to do different things, and we'll do that. Like we're best mates, we don't need to be together 24/7. So I was doing that when it happened, and they called Jack somehow. And I remember him saying to me on the phone, like, I'm not going to start swearing, but it was mainly swear words. and I think then he got in contact with my parents and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, my mum's never been on a long haul flight before. Her first long haul flight was to Colombia. I mean, my mum would have been terrified getting a flight to Colombia normally, let alone to find me in critical care.
Yeah.
Can't even imagine it, but I'm sure they've probably learnt a lot from this situation as well, maybe.
I do think, looking back at parents and coping, because if you say we had to cope individually, because we are the people who have actually had our injuries, but I think the fact that how your parents, how your friends, partners may react definitely can affect how you progress in your rehab.
Yeah, of course. I have like different groups of friends that, and I'm sure you've had the same, who behave in different ways. I had friends turn up to hospital when I go back to the UK and just start crying. And then I had other friends who would turn up and just like make a joke. Like talking about Ed.
It's ways of coping, isn't it?
Talking about Ed. Ed told me a story about, so like he had the same thing. He had some friends turn up, deeply emotional. Like he was essentially at the time couldn't move anything from his neck down, and one of his rugby mates turned up and threw some juggling balls at him and was like, "Mate, you've got a load of time in hospital. You may as well learn a new skill." And Ed can't move his arms, and he's got juggling balls there. And Ed was like, anyone else would listen to that and think that is awful. That's such a bad taste joke. But Ed was like, I just felt like that's how my friends would treat me, like normal.
Yeah.
They weren't like tiptoeing around me. They were just like making the same joke they would make if I'd stubbed my toe. And he was like, that was really comforting.
Yeah.
I don't know if you must have had different reactions to it all.
I had different reactions.
Yeah.
I rang my parents when it happened and actually told them I've had an accident, and this was when I was in the helicopter.
Yeah.
So I called home, called Becca, my girlfriend. She answered, hung up straight away because I was like, I froze. I was like, I don't know what to say. Rang her back on audio because I was there all wired up, all drugs, everything.
Wait, sorry. So you called her?
I called both my parents. I called my mum, called my dad. There was no answer. Then I called
That's
Becca.
mad. I find it mad that you had to actually do that yourself.
And then when I was in hospital 8 hours later, because I'm thinking what time it was, they would have just been getting up or whatever. I don't actually know what time it was. But I kind of spoke to Dad. Dad took hold of this phone call.
Yeah.
Like you said, I said, Dad, it's bad. Long old wait to see your dad walk through the hospital door when, you know,
It must have been emotional,
he needed
man.
the most. And he walked through the door and there was no words, but just like the longest hug you could possibly ever imagine.
Yeah.
And the emotion was immense because it was, I hadn't seen him in it was pretty much a whole year anyway.
Yeah.
So seeing my dad come out,
tough, man.
that was looking back, that moment, and then meeting, seeing my mum again in Heathrow at kind of arrivals.
Yeah.
That was probably the most emotional I've been
in
the whole process. But it was like, I'm home. I'm back on English soil. So, because I didn't know if, you know, at the time,
If
I
you
didn't
make it
know
home,
what the hell could have happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that my parents have been so supportive and friends, but like you say, friends have different reactions. But that's why you have different mates for different reasons as well. And if they're all the same, well,
I can't even begin to think about having to do the telling my parents myself. I don't know. I'd never even considered that.
it's not like I had a choice.
Yeah, I know. But neither did I. Like I don't. But I also don't even remember my parents arriving in Colombia because I was on another planet.
Yeah.
Like my brain was just fried. But yeah, that must have been quite intense.
That was hard. If you look back and, you know, if you spoke to my parents now, that would have been the hardest.
Yeah.
Cool. That's every parent's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
But I think the first thing I said to them was actually, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I said, I'm okay, but it's bad.
Well, I don't really remember this, but I when I was in the first or the first proper hospital before I ended up in Medellin, they had a translator on the phone from the embassy because my Spanish is good enough to get by, but like my parents have absolutely zero Spanish, and they said to my parents, if he doesn't have his leg chopped off, he's going to die. And then I ended up, I don't remember this, but I apparently was on the phone to my mum who was crying her eyes out. And to comfort my mum, I said, what are you crying about? It's not your leg. And I look back at it now and think, what was I doing? Like she, yeah, me. But at the same time, that was just my way of keeping her not grounded, but because she deserved to be upset. But I was like, if I'm fine, you got to be fine.
Because if you're not,
if I'm not fine, then you do what you want. But like, if I'm fine, it's my life, my situation. You've got to also be fine with it. And I think that kind of set the tone for everything else since. Like, I don't want to wallow in self-pity. I'm sure you don't either. I just want to get on with life and be treated like a normal person, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And just get on with it. And like, you've got to. But on that note, what's future plans? What have you got coming up?
Future plans is to continue to progress with CrossFit and really progress with it. I think the focus there, the opportunity there, you know, even coming back from America, from Texas, opportunities to kind of work with companies as well, which can really help kind of, you know, work opportunities, you know, looking at sponsorship as well. But alongside that, really grow kind of my self-talk, public keynote presentation business and really actually getting the word out there because, you know, we're both young men. If I can get into organisations, into schools, universities, and tell my story about adversity and resilience,
there's a lot of wisdom you can impart on people.
It's a message that cannot be ignored and I think needs to be spread and told. So that's my plan. And then I'm actually looking at progressing with actually working really with people who have faced similar. So with my degree, I'm now a CrossFit Level 1 coach. I'm now a adaptive and inclusive trainer. So I'm looking at progressing and actually getting people out the woodwork who are at home, who are depressed, who don't want to leave because they're worried of what the world will think of them. And if we can change those lives, get them out into independent living, functional fitness, rehab, then as we know, there's an incredible life to be lived.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's a very worthwhile way to spend your time. And actually, you know, like I said before, if you may have come home from Australia and kind of got some boring office job and not helped anyone in your life. So actually, again, another positive.
Worst nightmare for me would be working in an office job.
Yeah.
But what about you? Plans now? You're 6 months, you're 5 months post
Yeah,
amputation.
about 5.5 months. Yeah. Honestly, there's like too many things going on to even pin one down at the moment. My main goal right now is learn to walk, get the prosthetics sorted, and then get back on my feet properly. Once that is sorted, then it opens the doors to getting back travelling, sport. I have been doing a bit of getting back into rowing and stuff, which is possible, but like it's just too early on to say I'm doing this one thing. I'm gonna kind of explore every option, and then it will just present itself. Like I didn't expect to be sat here with one leg doing a podcast with you, but here we are.
Exactly.
So if I try and predict what's gonna happen in 2 years, it's just gonna be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to wait and see.
See the opportunities as they come, and the
Yeah.
path will be made. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
So the theme of season 4, Beyond Disability, is rising to the challenge. So Henry, what are the 3 biggest daily challenges you face? And I'll tell you mine as well.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing straight away is I can no longer use a knife. So
You have to get an attachment on the end of
yeah,
your...
I've tried with my split hook to kind of secure a knife into it,
Yeah.
but it just isn't the same. So if there's a big steak in front of me, I look at it thinking, right, how am I going to hack this? So my go-to now is pre-slice it. Even when I go to restaurants, I'll kind of say, can I have a steak medium rare? Can I also have it sliced? And they look at me for a second like, and then I just kind of give my left arm a little wiggle. That absolutely says there's no problem whatsoever. Second, I would say, is probably the one thing I do find difficult is like washing, for example.
Yeah.
Very active, so I'm always in the gym. I cannot, if I'm in someone else's place, like at the gym, at my partner's house or a hotel or whatever, I can't reach my right armpit.
Oh.
Like with my left hand, you think you really, I cannot get to that point. So I do have a big long stick in my home shower, but I don't take that everywhere with me. So that's another thing. I'll have a fresh, nice shower. Yeah. And 95% of my body smells amazing, but my right armpit is still that side where if I don't have access to that kind of tool, then I'm a bit.
I never even thought about that. That's insane.
So that's another point. And then making a bed. I think no one likes to make a bed anyway, on their own. But normally you go in, inside out, right corner, left corner, inside out and shake. Now
you can't do it,
way more of a challenge.
I feel like all of these things just need their own individual prosthetic attachment. You need like a big knife, a big Dorset prosthetic knife you just use to chop everything. Maybe like an electric one, like a mini chainsaw.
We'll chat to Hakeem and see what he can sort for us.
And then you get sort of like a bed specific attachment.
Yeah, I mean there are so many attachments out there.
Washing your armpits.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say those 3 are kind of the ones that come to mind. Being upper, so being lower. What are some challenges that you rise to?
Well, the main one's falling over. Most of the time I forget I'm missing a leg. So the times I have fallen over, which is not great, is when I've literally just like gone to get up or something and my leg's just not there and I just topple over. Which is bizarre because like you think by now I'd have remembered. That's not ideal. And then just the thing, like in the middle of the night, if you wake up and you want to go get some water, like I was saying before, I wake up and I'm like, right, I'll go get some water, and I'm like, wait, I can't. I have to go and hop with my crutches or like try and find a wheelchair. I'm not going to put my prosthetic on in the middle of the night yet. So that's annoying. And then, what's the last one? The other one that's just becoming a bit of annoying at the moment is because I wear my right trainer a lot more than my left, I seem just to be wearing 3 right trainers and the left one's all really flashy still. And then I go to put them on and I put my right one on and then I go to put my left on and then my leg's not there. I do it all the time. I go to put my trainer on and I'm like, oh wait, what am I doing? I've literally not got a leg to put my trainer on because like my brain hasn't caught up with the fact that I'm missing a limb yet. But
so are you keeping all your fresh shoes then? Once your old shoes,
I need to just go and buy. I think you can actually buy single shoes now.
You can.
Yeah.
Probably cost just as much as buying 2. I bet
probably but maybe I need to just get a load of right shoes.
Yeah. Well, on the shoe kind of topic, shoelaces.
Oh yeah, of course.
Are a pain in the ass. So these shoes are actually not for people who can't tie shoelaces, but they're just an adaptive they're not an adaptive training shoe, standard shoe.
Yeah.
But they're designed for people to just quickly get into their shoes.
Yeah.
So I never tie these shoelaces because I can just slip into them.
Yeah.
So big walking boots, all of that stuff.
Yeah,
If I
must be
come
hard.
undone, it's like, Becca, can you just tie my
Yeah,
shoelaces?
some do shirt.
Yes, I can tie my shoelaces
Yeah.
with one hand, but it's not the best knot. They'll come undone.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just little things like that. When you walk in the street, especially if I'm in London on my own.
You can't ask a stranger to do your shoes up for you.
I've done it before. I was in a nightclub not too soon after I came back from Oz, and everyone had gone to the toilet and my shoelaces come undone. So I asked the woman behind the bar, I said, "Oh, can you do me a favour?" And the lad who worked behind there said, "Yeah, nice one, mate. Is that your good chat-up line?" I said, "No, seriously, can you just tie? I'll let you do it. Can you tie my shoelace?"
Yeah. Did he know you were missing out?
No, he didn't at the time.
Oh,
so
right.
he thought I was just like trying to just
Mate, it's always
chirp up,
it's always quite.
We did
funny.
laugh after.
Yeah, well, it's always quite funny when people. I mean, like that situation you had. I have it all the time. Where when I wear trousers, I've got my
People won't know,
crutches.
will they?
People go, "Sprained your ankle, have you?" I'm like, "Yeah."
A bit more than that.
A little bit more than that. And then they'll go, "What happened?" I'm like, "I just crashed my motorbike." And they're like, "Oh, be alright soon, will it?" And I'll like pull my trouser leg up, and they'll see that my leg isn't there, and they'll go,
Yeah.
"Oh my days."
Yeah. It's
good though.
Yeah. A similar thing happened quickly before we finish in Australia in the hostel. So I had actually booked 3 days in the hostel after Northern Territories to stay, and I rang them up to say, "Can I cancel it?" And they're like, "It's too close. Like, sorry, fine, I don't care. It was however much." And I went in there because I had some mates who I met there 3 months ago before I went to the station who were still there. So I said, "Oh, can I just give them the credit for the room?" And they're like, "Oh, why aren't you staying?" I said, "Oh, I kind of had a bad accident, so I'm coming back." I said, "Oh, what?" Because I was in a sling. I said, "Did you break your arm?" I said, "Yeah, kind of something like that." And I lifted it up. She realised it was amputated. She was like, flipping neck. Alright, so she gave them the credit from my mates in the room. But yeah, it's things like that. You don't see it below a desk, do you?
No, of course.
So yeah, funny stories, and I'm sure there'll be more of them coming.
Absolutely, man.
A whole life left living as an amputee.
Well, it was a pleasure, dude.
Pleasure.
Nice one.
Great to see you again.